There's nothing that will ever change in your finances and your wealth journey if you don't get the psychology of money right, if you don't get your behavior around how money and finance works.
If they can do it, I can do it. And if you have that mindset, that will set you on a path to achieving whatever goal you want in life.
What's going on, everybody? Chris Naugle back with the Money School podcast, where we teach you the truth about money, but not just the truth about money. We teach you how to take back control of your money by teaching you how to become the bank. But there are so many problems with what I just said that we teach, and that all comes down to your mindset around money, which is exactly why my guest today is going to rock your world, folks. You need to pay attention. This is literally going to be one of those episodes that is pure fire, because there's nothing that will ever change in your finances and your wealth journey if you don't get the psychology of money right, if you don't get your behavior around how money and finance works. And that's exactly what my guest, Brad Klontz, is going to talk about. Now, I got to put my glasses on. Literally one of the most accomplished guests I've had in quite a long time. So he's an author of 8 books, and he's got a brand new book coming out. Mark my words, I'm going to be reading this book, and all of you should. It is Christmas. Get it for your family, your kids' kids. Yes, this is a book they all need to read. It is called Start Thinking Rich. We'll be talking about that. But there's 8 other books he's written. He's a financial planner, an expert in behavioral finance, and a financial psychologist. I've never even heard of that. And I've been in the Wall Street world and around it for a long time. So he's an associate professor of practice in the financial psychology and behavioral finance at Creedon's University of Hyder College of Business. I probably got that wrong. He's also a fellow at American Psychology Association and a former president at Hawaii's Hawaii, I almost had it, Psychological Association. So everything he teaches is understanding the views on money. Welcome, Brad.
Wow. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I almost nailed it. I got that last one wrong, but you know what? I was on a roll before that.
As you're reading, I'm like, guys, I'm really not that boring. Okay, stick around. This is going to be a fun talk. Oh no, a professor. Oh, but that's the greatest part about it, because, listen, and we were talking offline, about money. And one of the biggest things, and I say this to my staff, and please don't take offense to this, anybody, but I tell my team, my mentors, and my advisors, I tell them all, we must first understand who our client is not, so that we can understand who our client is. And all that means is, folks, we can fix things with money. Like myself and Brad, like we're experts when it comes to money. But we can't fix your mindset. If your mindset's broken around money, and here's the thing, Brad, I want to dive right in, but then I want to get the history of like how you came to this point. But the most important thing, there are so many people that are born into a family, born into, some circumstance, good, bad, or indifferent, but they think that what they were born into, what their parents went through, is what they must live. And I don't know where that broken mindset comes from, but I'm sure you do. So can we just start right there on how people think that they're destined to be failures, destined not to be a success, destined not to be wealthy because of where they were born, who they were, what they were born into, or how their upbringing was? Yeah. So man, you just went straight to it. And really what it all comes down to is some research that was done on torturing dogs. And it's actually terrible research. Talk about it in the new book, but it's going to explain this entire concept for you. So I grew up, a little bit of my story here. I grew up lower income, broken family, trauma. So I had a bit of that, right? One of the questions I had was, branches of my family have been in the US since the Mayflower, yet both sides of my family, both my grandparents are living in trailer parks. And as a young child, I was like, where's the American dream in my family? It's like, we've been here for hundreds of years and we're living in trailer parks. What's going on? And luckily, I was asking myself that question when I was young, because just in asking that question, you're changing your entire mindset. Because typically you just have your head down. You're like, this is life. And I had a bunch of beliefs, and I've done research on these beliefs. They're called money scripts. I had beliefs about why this was happening. Beliefs like, well, the system is rigged against us poor people. You got, if you want to be rich, you got to be born rich. It takes money to make money. All these things. Yeah, I thought if I wanted to be rich, I had to go to private school. Well, I didn't go to private school. I didn't have the quote right connections. I mean, there's an entire list of beliefs that will keep you stuck as you explain yourself around why you're in the situation you're in. So back to this research on dogs, and this is so incredibly terrible and powerful. What they did to dogs, they put them into cages, and then they would electrify the bottom of the cage. Okay, now, what do you think the dog did? The dog, of course, tried to escape, jumped up and down, howled, every inch of the cage, trying to find an escape, realized there is no escape. And then it went into a freeze response. This is how we respond to stress when we think escape is impossible. And it just laid down and whimpered and took it. And I want you to be thinking, listener, have you in your life and your relationship around money, have you just laid down and are you just taking it? Because that's what these dogs did, because escape was impossible for them. So if you grow up in a lifestyle of poverty, it's a miserable, traumatic experience. You're a child. Escape is impossible. What are you going to do? You're going to get a newspaper route and then you're going to bring your family out of poverty as a kid? Of course not. You can't do it. You can't make that kind of money as a 9-year-old. Now, the scary part about this research is that they did another experiment and they took brand new dogs who hadn't been traumatized. They put them in a cage. And Chris, you're going to resonate with this because when you see these people suffering like this and you see what's happening, you're like, oh my God, escape is just right over here. All you got to do is jump over here. So what they did with these new dogs, half the cage was electrified. There was a little barrier. And on the other side, there was no electric shock. So it was total safety. So these new dogs, they're getting a shock on the feet. What do? They bounce around, they jump around, they jump over the barrier. Oh, now they're safe. No more shock. Okay. But when they took the dogs who had been in the first experiment where escape was impossible, they learned escape is impossible no matter what I do. Just lay down and take it. They put them in that cage. All they had to do was jump over the barrier, safety on the other side. They just laid down and took it.
Wow.
And what psychologists term that is learned helplessness.
That's wild. Just thinking about that, I'm thinking back to all the people that I've known, all the people that I've come in contact with in my life, and a lot of them just take it. And the answer, literally, like we'll call it the barrier. The answer to them getting out of the mess is literally just jump over the barrier. The obstacle's the way. Go right through the obstacle, and on the other side is the path. And they don't. I see this all the time. We work with people probably like you that we'll take them down this entire path. Then they're ready. They're ready to change their life. And then all of a sudden they get a second wind and they're like, I don't know if this is right. I don't know if this is right. This person said that person said this person said that isn't the right thing. But like the other thing too, I want to really hit on, Brad, is a lot of times our environment and who we hang out with and who we surround ourselves with is so much a part of that lay down and just take it. Because, I remember growing up, and our stories are pretty similar. I grew up, my grandparents, where I spent a lot of time growing up as a child, lived in a mobile home park. I mean, that's just where I grew up. I rode my BMX around a mobile home park. I, had friends there. That was just all I knew. And we lived in a small house, very, very similar, but like what makes me different than the other people that just lay down and just take it, and that's the mystery. And Earl Nightingale talks about this all the time as well in his studies, but it's just crazy that people come up with every excuse and then they bring their peers in. But then I always ask people, I say, are they living the life you want? Do they have the lifestyle, the freedom of time that you want? The answer is 100% no every time. No, he works in a factory. He works where I do. No, we're just drinking buddies. He's not doing anything. But yet that's who they take advice from instead of looking at the other side and getting the advice from the people that are living the life they want, doing the things they want to do. Like, how is it that someone breaks free? Like I always say, and this is another thing, I say sometimes you just can't fix stupid, but it's not so much stupid. It's just a broken mindset. But like, to me, sometimes I'm just like, I throw my arms up. I'm like, I just can't fix you. I can't change your mindset.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I'm really, really curious. What do you think separated you from many of your peers growing up in the same environment where something flipped on for you around, wait, I could actually do this. I could actually have a different life. Do you have any idea of what flipped that switch for you?
Gosh, I've never really thought about that, to be
Okay.
honest. And I didn't do anything so much different. I'll tell you the one thing I always loved. I was a very creative kid, and even into my teens and early 20s, I was a visionary. Like I had visions of big things, but I'd always like hit roadblocks, and earlier in my life, I would just stop at those. Like I wouldn't push through them because it was too hard or because somebody would tell me not to. And I had two best friends, one who is still my best friend, the other who I don't even talk to anymore for exactly the reasons we're talking right now. But I remember when I would hit these hard times, I would revert back to him and we'd go drinking, and, I would just fall right back. I would literally go from like, I'm making it to then now I'm back to where I was and I should just be content. And, the one person, I can really only point to one person. I call her my unconditional one. It was my mom. My mom never had anything, pretty much, did everything to raise me, but she always taught me to continue dreaming. And, I would tell my mom things that I'd never tell anybody else about, like my dreams, my ambitions, and what I wanted. And she would just tell me, well, why aren't you doing that? What do you have to lose? Like if you lose it all today, you just make it all back. And that was, I guess, the only thing I could say I had was that one person who, when I confided in her, and I had to confide in her, she would ask the hard question of, well, then why aren't you doing it? What do you have to lose?
I love it. So actually, I happen to have a chapter in this new book called You Got to Get Rid of Your Poor Friends If You Want to Get Rich.
Absolutely.
And it's sort of a harsh statement. It's like, oh my God.
Not harsh at all. It's the truth about life.
It truly is. But I will say this as a caveat. I talk a lot about mindset. So I think there's a big difference between being poor and being broke. Okay, so broke is you have no money. I've been broke. You've been broke. I may be broke again someday. A lot of multimillionaires have been broke several times throughout their life. Poor though, poor. Poor is a mindset. It's a whole set of beliefs about the world, about who you are, about what's possible, and that can keep you broke forever. And so if you're hanging around people with a poor mindset, it is going to suck you right back into being broke. And by the way, some of these poor mindsets, and I know you worked on Wall Street, so I know you saw this. Some people are making multiple six-figure incomes, right? And they get the money and it just goes straight out the door on not on assets, but on liabilities, and they spend it all. And they're out drinking. They're leasing fancy cars, watches, the whole deal. That is a poor mindset. And if you hang around people like that, you are going to be broke forever. So it's not really about that. And one of the things you described with your mom is your mom had a really important part of her mindset that I would say is a rich mindset. And a rich mindset is a whole nother set of beliefs, including open-mindedness. So, and by the way, this is something that's been studied a lot in psychology. It's like, oh, all right. So, and this is, all right. So it's a great example too. So, for example, I'm thinking of myself and when I wanted to write a book. Okay. And I'm thinking about the clients you're talking about who are almost ready to pull the trigger and then come up with all these excuses because someone said this, someone said that, someone said this. Well, I guarantee you, they're talking to people who have never had that experience and are afraid and are probably stuck in a lower socioeconomic status than what that person is aspiring to be. And so they're given all the roadblocks and all the mindsets. And these are the mindsets that keep people in middle class and keep them in lower income. Very clear. And the studies I've done with thousands of people, by the way, so we've seen very clear differences between rich, ultra rich people and how they think versus middle class versus lower income. And they're almost like tribes. So if you are hanging around a middle class tribe, nothing wrong with it. They have certain beliefs about how money works. If you're hanging around a low income tribe, they have beliefs like this. Rich people are greedy. You got to take advantage of others to get money. Don't trust financial advisors. Like this is a belief set that is only, frankly, lower income people have. Because the majority of ultra wealthy people, almost all of them, have advisors that they trust to guide them and mentor them into the world of investing. And the poor mindset thinks, oh, well, these rich people know everything. It's no. As a matter of fact, they're more likely to ask for help than somebody who's lower income because they realize, I don't know everything. I'm good at making widgets. I'm going to take your advice on what I do with my money in terms of investing. That's not my expertise. And so the bottom line is, if you want to have a different experience in life around money, you're going to have to find people that you can find as mentors. And by the way, in your story, I was waiting to hear about a mentor and you shared that. That's what happened to me. I remember when I was 11 years old, so I'm in sixth grade, and I went to my buddy's house and I walked into his house. Well, first of all, I saw it from the outside and I'm like, oh my God, they're so rich. And in retrospect, they were middle class, but they were rich compared to me. And I walked in and they had 2 bathrooms, Chris. And I was like, oh my God, they have 2 bathrooms. Like this, they're rich. And I remember that I became a psychologist right then. I'm having dinner with my buddy's dad, and I was like interviewing him, as if I was on a podcast. How do you make money? What do you do? And I was just hungry because I'm like, there's other people living different lives. But here's the mindset shift that people need to make to even be open to this. And it's so important. And here it is. If they can do it, I can do it. And if you have that mindset, that will set you on a path to achieving whatever goal you want in life.
I love that. And I didn't go into the mentor thing, but let me just continue on with what you just said vividly, almost like I can touch it, smell it, feel it. There was a point when I was a kid. I was just a early teenager. I don't even know, maybe 16, 17 years old. My one friend, I hung out with her all the time. Her dad was a very prominent attorney. And I didn't grow up in a wealthy area. I grew up in a little town called Lockport, but Lockport had this one street where all the wealthy people lived. And she lived on that street. Now, I remember I would go over there all the time, but the garage door was always shut. And I never went in her house. I just would go there and we'd leave and go do whatever. But this day, the garage door was open. And in there, I saw a Porsche 911. The first time I'd ever been that close to a Porsche 911. I had one on my wall from a young age as a kid. I had a 930 Turbo poster on my wall for my entire childhood. I literally can describe it down to the fuzzy dice hanging from the mirror, which, by the way, one of my Porsches right now has the exact same fuzzy dice because that's how crystal clear it was. But when I saw that car, the first thing I said to her, her name was Alexis. I said, Alexis, what are the chances that your dad would take me for a ride in his car? So she said, I don't know. He's home. Let me go ask. She went and asked, and he said, just take him for a ride. And he threw her the keys to the car. It was my first ride. It was solidified right there. It was destined to happen. No ifs, ands, or buts. I was going to have one of those cars. And it was just that moment. But as I went through my path, there was a lot of things, a lot of ups and downs, lots of failures, but mentors were a big part. Now I remember early on, like when I was in my early 30s, I hired my very first mentor. I could not afford him. His name was Scott. And I needed him in my life so bad. I heard him speak at an event. He was exactly the guy I needed at exactly that time. But I sat down with him and you know how this call goes or this conversation goes. You're waiting to say all the right things. You're so excited this person can change my life. Hey, Scott, what would that cost? And he lays it out. And funny to think about this now. He's like, it's $2,500 a month. And I remember just being completely deflated. And I was with my girlfriend at that time, who's now my wife, and she was completely deflated. We knew we needed him, but when he said the amount, my limited mindset, my poor mindset came in, and I'm like, there's no way I can afford that. In an instant, I shut down. And he said, he didn't say, I can work with you, I can do this. He said, that's my price. I'm worth every penny of it. Let me know, if you want to work together. I'm definitely willing to take you on. And I remember we thought about it. The next day we went back to the event and I took the plunge and I did it. I literally, that meant we probably weren't going to eat. We weren't going to be able to go out to eat. We weren't going to be able to do a lot of things. But for some reason, and this is something I still haven't figured out yet today, Brad, the money just appeared. And every time I've leveled up to mentors, I spend hundreds of thousands in mentors now, but every time I've leveled up, the money has just appeared. It's almost like the universe just opened up and just gave me the money to afford that person right when I needed them. I don't know if that's just me thinking crazy, but there has never been a time where I've taken the plunge and committed. The money didn't just appear for it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think there's a lot of psychological reasons for it too. There may be metaphysical ones too, which I'm very open-minded about. It's sort of like, anyway, we won't get into quantum physics, but it's sort of a powerful thing. And I believe that if you have a super strong vision of something and you can feel it and you can taste it, it dramatically shifts everything. And by the way, I actually did a study on that. So we got people to increase their savings rates by 73% after 1 hour of visualizing their goals. And so the great thing I love about your Porsche 911 story is that talk about a visualization. Like the most important part of visualizing is, can you feel it? Can you taste it? Can you smell it? And so we had people close their eyes and just picture and And then we had them draw pictures and create vision boards of these things. People got so excited about their top 3 financial goals, which is what we had them do. Miraculously, 73% increase in savings towards those goals. And before they started, they'd be like, I can't save another dime. Like, are you kidding me? I'm stretched, money's tight. And all of a sudden it appeared because they got so fired up about something they could taste. And with your mentor, you could actually see a clear vision. You're like, oh my gosh, this guy can help set me on the path. I can feel it. Your girlfriend was there, who's now your wife, and you guys both could feel it. And it just became so tangible. You were willing to subconsciously just reorganize your entire life. Your entire attitude towards money shifted, and there was the money to pay for it. And it's so powerful. It happens every single time. Here, and conversely, this is what happens if you don't have a powerful vision of why you want to be what you want to be spending your money on. This is literally what's going to happen. It's all going to disappear. It's all going to disappear. There's nothing worse than an amorphous like checking account, and I'm an expert in this. My wife's a psychologist too. And I tell you what, if we've got 50 grand sitting in a checking account over a period of time, what's going to happen psychologically for us is that we're going to start feeling oh yeah, we could get that. We could do this. We could do that. And then before you know it, the money's all gone. Meanwhile, if we take that money and we immediately allocate it towards our savings goals, which are many, we like to vacation, we like to, fix the house and do various projects along the way. If we allocate it to that, before you know it, oh my gosh, now I have money to pay on what really matters for me. So it's a fascinating concept, and it's how our deep psychology works. And if you're not conscious, and if you don't set those goals, and because the other thing psychologically, you have to override this natural impulse we all have to be self-destructive when it comes to money. We are wired to spend it all right now. And this goes back to our prehistoric days. 99% of our time on earth, we're hunter-gatherers, right? There's no saving. It's like eat as much as you can, and you can only save what you could carry, and you have to share it all with the tribe. I mean, we are just wired to do it all wrong when it comes to money. To override that, you have to have a super compelling, passionate, exciting vision of what's possible. And the great thing about a mentor is quite often those mentors have achieved it. So not only do they see that it's possible, they're living it. And so when you're around them, you're feeling even closer to it because you can taste it and feel it and see it. And it's so incredible. That's why you have to be careful about who you're paying attention to, because you are very likely going to be drawn into that world and that reality.
Yeah, to that, one of the things, and I'm sure you guys do this at your firm. And now, is your firm's name your Mental Wealth Advisors, or is it the Financial Psychology Institute? Because I know you.
Yeah, I've got a few different
both.
businesses.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So with your firm, I'm sure you tell people to do this, because this is what's helped me tremendously. I read the book Profit First, and that book, when I finished, Motorboat Mike is what we call him. It just snapped in my mind. I'm like, this is so simple, but yet no one throughout my entire life, not even my training as an advisor, ever taught this. But with that, like I always call it the black hole, right? Your checking account. You get paid, you put the money in the checking account, you see a bunch of money in there, and inherently, for some reason, at the end of most months, that money's gone. We found a way to get rid of it. So what we started doing is taking the money in there, leaving just enough, barely enough to pay the normal budgeted bills, which you got to do a budget for this. Every other penny, we would literally immediately, I knew what day the money would go in there, because it would always be the same from the financial firm. They'd deposit the money, for the fees in exactly the same day. So I would sweep it. I try to do it like 2 or 3 days after into another account. I had no bank. I had no debit card. I had no checks for this account. Sure, I could go on and look at it, but it wasn't accessible like it was in my regular checking account with the debit card. And then we would sweep the money over there. That money would build. When it got to a certain point and I felt compelled, I would then sweep it. And I'm big into specially designed whole life. So we swept everything into whole life policies. And we've been doing this for a long time. So now that money's over there, still fully accessible, but it's more difficult for me to get it. And now to get it, I got to take a loan from the insurance company. So I've created these mental, because it really is a mental game, barriers to access of my money. But what that's done is allowed me to save. I always tell people the first law of wealth: save 10% of what you make. And what I save close to 35% now of what my gross is. But that wasn't easy. It didn't just be like, hey, one day I turned out of bed and I'm like, hey, we're going to save 35% of what we make. No, it was a gradual thing, but it involved that siloing or segregation of different funds in different places that made it harder and harder to get. I don't know if you do anything like that, but I know most, advisory firms have some level of that, but that has been one of the single greatest things for helping me be able to save the amount that I do today.
Yeah, there's a few things that play there. I'm a huge advocate of it. As I just mentioned, I do in my personal life. And the other thing we do too is we name the accounts. So that's the other thing we had people do in the study. So it's not just random accounts, because random accounts, the money just goes. You need to emotionally attach to it. So it's like, that's my financial freedom account. That's Ethan's college fund. That is our vacation fund. And maybe even our European vacation, or Japan vacation. I mean, the more you can attach emotion to it, the less likely you are to sabotage it. So there's a few things at play here. Now too, you can automate this stuff. And by the way, that's the best hack ever. So it's like, when the money's coming in, and then you automate a certain amount each month going over there, because that reduces friction. And the more you reduce friction, the more likely things are to happen. And you increase friction by separating out the accounts. And this is actually, it's a fascinating concept. This is what gym memberships do. I know that people listening, perhaps you've been paying a monthly gym membership longer than you've actually been using it. And what they're using is they're using a status quo bias. They're using automation. So you've already decided that a healthy body is important to you. So that's why you've allocated money to that. What does it take to override that? Think about the mental effort you need to go. You have to basically say to yourself, okay, fine, it's not that important to me health-wise. And as a matter of fact, what you're going to do before you do that is just say, I just need to get to the gym more, because it is important. And so they actually harness that to their benefit, hopefully to your benefit too. Hopefully you are going to the gym and using it, but it's the same technology you can apply to yourself. So you get excited, you have your separate accounts, whatever those are, you've named them after something you're really passionate about, then you automate the money transfer over there. I love your technique of making it as little as possible in your checking account, because all that is going to disappear. It is. And so pay yourself first. What's most important to you? Automate it.
Your real estate business lives and dies by the network and the connections that you make. I mean, after all, your network, well, it's your net worth. That's what you always heard, right? If that's an area where you desire improvement, well, Private Money Club, it's for you. PMC saves you precious time and money by bringing the real estate world, well, right to you, right in the palm of your hand. So get in on the action like so many others have by going to privatemoneyclub.com and sign up.
It's the best wealth growing hack I think there is.
Yeah, but it's such a simple one. It's not like you even need an advisor, which I'm not a financial advisor anymore. I gave up those licenses in 2018. So kudos for you for still dealing with, the governing bodies called FINRA and those fun folks. Yeah. A lot of credit for that. But one thing I want to talk about, I want to dive a little bit deeper into just advising people on money and some of the things that you teach and, in your 8 books, but specifically Start Thinking Rich. When it comes to money and people, giving up their money, giving up control of it, putting it somewhere, what are some of the most important things or things maybe that your book talks about teaching them how to overcome emotional based investing versus logic? Like I see this more now than I've ever seen. It is prevalent. Let me just go one step further, like Bitcoin. Bitcoin been around for a little while. I remember I think it was last year, you could have bought it for 17, 18,000. Now it's 106,000, but people don't want to buy it when it's free falling 30, 40%. It's, $17 to $25. They want to buy it when it's 106 because it's that emotion, that FOMO, the fear of missing out. Oh my God, it's going to go to 150,000. I can't miss it this time. I missed that whole last run. And it's exactly when they do that it goes the opposite direction. And then when it goes the opposite direction, they defy all Warren Buffett's rules of buy low, sell high, and don't lose money. And they sell low and then they wait to buy it back when it's high. Why is
we are insane?
How people
we are insane.
React?
Yeah. Yeah, we're insane when it comes to money. All of our instincts around investing are absolutely wrong. Do not trust anything that you think you know. And even worse than that, don't trust your friends. Hey, did you hear about this new crypto, this new coin, this new stock, whatever it is? And I think that's the most important message, frankly, is you are an absolute idiot when it comes to trying to predict the future. And you're an idiot when it comes to that. We all are, by the way. And then secondly, your instincts are all wrong. And why do we do this? I'm going to go back to our tribal prehistoric days. It explains everything, I think, when it comes to money. It explains markets, the whole thing. So imagine you're in a hunter-gatherer group, that you're around the fire and you got shelters around. And then all of a sudden, people scream, everyone stands up and runs west. What are you going to do? Well, I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to get up and you're going to run west. Because if you didn't, you got picked off by the saber-toothed tiger. So the genes of everyone's going this direction, I'm just going to stay comfortably here, they got weeded out thousands of years ago. Those people never passed on their genes. So we have what's called a herding instinct. We all do. So it's really important to recognize that you have this. We're most vulnerable to these things when we think that we're immune to it. And by the way, financial professionals have it too. And in some ways, they're even worse. They're managing even more people's money. They're even more stressed. Think about what's on the line for them. So you cannot trust your instincts because we are absolutely wired to buy high because of FOMO, because the whole herd's running over here. By the way, whether they're excited or they're afraid, it doesn't matter. It's, it's like the market's crashing. Oh no, sell. Oh wait, it's the highest it's ever been. Buy. We do it absolutely wrong. And it's one of the reasons why studies show that dead people outperform living people when it comes to investing. Now, isn't that fascinating?
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, when you do an analysis of accounts, it's like, oh, these are outperforming, and then you look, it's like, oh, that person died, a year ago. That's why they're doing so much better than the living. And even 95% of pros on Wall Street can't beat the index. They can't do it. And so, market timing, predicting the future. We're all subject to it, especially if you grew up poor. You have this get rich quick mentality. Of course you do. I mean, do you really want to spend 40 years of like saving and investing to become rich if you could just do this over here? And so we're wired to do it all wrong. It's the most important thing to recognize, I think.
I just did a YouTube video. I think you'd find it fascinating, where we went into a study of looking at the average account balance, and we targeted 401ks because it's such a large pool of money. And we went through different generations, silent generations straight up through to where we're at today. And we looked at the balances, but then we studied deeper into each one of those generations and how they thought. Obviously silent generations still had influence, over the Great Depression. So, although they were good savers, they didn't really make returns because they were mattress people. They put their money under mattresses. And as it went through this whole study, but the end result was almost identical to what you just said. None of them had even close to enough money, at least the averages. We're just talking averages. There's always the outliers, the 5%ers, but all of them were severely underperforming from a saving standpoint to what they'd actually need to be able to retire with any kind of meaningful retirement. So like, how do we get the majority to break the chains of financial slavery, to literally save enough, to invest properly, to work with the proper mentors and advisors to get where they are? Like, where does that shift happen, or are we just doomed? Is this just what it's going to be, and we can just expect people are going to be financial, they're going to be broke?
Right. Well, I think it helps to step back and look at a little bit of the history around why we're in the situation we're in. So for my grandfather's generation, my grandfather worked for GM, and he was promised Social Security. Like, hey, don't worry about it. You're going to be funded by the government for your retirement. And then GM said, hey, and not only that, we're going to give you a pension. So don't worry about it. You don't have to save anything. Like my grandfather, again, he lived in a trailer park, partially because he was traumatized from the Great Depression. So he went to the bank one day as a young man, and all of a sudden all his money was gone. And so literally my grandpa died when he was 94, and he never put $1 in the bank his entire life. And by the way, that's a great way to stay broke, because he didn't trust the banks because he was traumatized. He lost all his money. And so you see these patterns too. And you just mentioned it, generational patterns around money. People, an entire generation got traumatized. That's why they became hoarders. Millennials saw their parents lose a bunch of money, 2008. So many of them have swore off the stock market. And the crazy part is they swear it off until it hits all-time peaks, and then they get in.
Bingo.
And then it crashes. They say, oh yeah, see, right. I should have known. And it just reinforces their beliefs because they do it all wrong. So these patterns persist. So, but the thing, I just want us all give ourselves a little bit of a break, because the bottom line is personal finance is actually really easy. Like, I've yet to find somebody who doesn't know what they should be doing. It's like, don't spend more than you make, save for the future. Okay, now those are two very simple concepts. Everybody knows them. Those are the two biggest problems we have in America right there. So what I think, it's all psychology. It's all psychology. So, but the bottom line is, it was a huge rug pull. Okay. So my grandfather's generation, it's like you literally did not have to save and invest for your financial freedom, for your future. You're going to be taken care of. They pulled the rug. So essentially what happened is the corporations, they just wrote it right off. It's like, we're no longer going to fund your pensions. We're no longer going to be responsible for it. It's a contribution plan. You have to do it yourself, right? Oh, I do? Oh, when did you get the memo? At what grade in school were you? Hey, look, you're going to be poor the rest of your life unless you guys start saving and investing from day one. You mentioned 10%. I did 30% from day one. And so it was so easy. So I didn't get out of grad school until I was 29. I owed $100,000.
A lot of time in school.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, by the way, too, I became an expert in financial psychology because I became a day trader. Because I owed $100,000 of student loan debt. I saw a friend of mine make $100,000 in 1 year trading. And by the way, I would go to his house and I'd see him at the computer and he'd buy 1,000 shares of this or that on margin. And I'm like, what is that company? He's like, I have no idea. Click. I mean, like it was that level of insanity, because when the market does this, everyone's a great trader, right? Because whatever you buy, it goes up. And so I thought, oh God, this is how I can get out of debt. So I sold everything I had of value, which by the way, I was fine because I never had anything my entire life. I mainly had a truck. I drove a $500 car. I literally had nothing. It started trading with it. Incredible 3 months. And then to reveal my age, the tech bubble burst and it started to crash. And I'm like, oh my God. And at the end of 6 months of doing everything wrong, I asked myself, why would a reasonably intelligent person do something so stupid with his money? And that's how I became an expert in financial psychology, because I was trying to figure that out. And I realized nobody had really done any research on it. And so, within a matter of months, I became the world's leading expert because psychology had ignored the entire topic of money. But we're just wired to do it absolutely all wrong. And when it comes to saving and investing for a future, it used to be we didn't have to take that wasn't our responsibility. Really let this sink in. So why were you not taught how to do this? Because it wasn't your grandparents' and great-grandparents' responsibility. They were promised by the government and their corporations. We have a chapter in our book. We talk about, your political party doesn't give a shit about you. They don't, and your companies don't. They're not going to do it for you either. This is 100% on you as the individual. And I think, Chris, that's the message that hasn't trickled through. And so we're delayed. And so that's why the podcast like yours is so important, because people need to understand, oh my God, it's all on me. It is all on you.
Wow. Folks, you have got to get this book, Start Thinking Rich. I mean, just the title, like Start Thinking Rich, like that's what it is. It's mind over matter. It's talked about in Napoleon Hill's, it's talked about in all of these, Earl Nightingale, Napoleon Hill, they talk about in their book. It's your thoughts that are what are going to change things. And that's exactly what Dr. Brad is talking about here. I got one final question, then I want to dive just a little bit deeper into your practice and the different things that you do in your advisory practice and also your studies. But I want to talk a little bit about like where we're at right now, in the economic cycle, and dive a little bit deeper. One of the things that drives me nuts, okay, we're definitely at the top of, what we might call a bubble. I mean, just looking at the cycles and everything else. So I think it's inherently known to most people that the next phase is probably going to be a little bit of a rockier road, economically, and the markets might not be what they were for this longest bull run, we've ever had in history. But the point is, why don't people just see the easiest path to wealth is through their debts and expenses? For example, I see people, we deal with thousands of people a year, but we'll just say hundreds of people. And in the discussions where we're doing our fact finding, we find out here's all their assets. A lot of people have a bunch of money sitting in CDs, banks, and things. Because hey, right now they're getting paid finally to keep money in safe assets. So they got a bunch of money over here, which I get really excited for them. I'm like, wow, you've done a great job saving. All right, let's move over to the other side. Like, what do you got for debts? And then we go through the debts. And the only thing I always say is, holy shit, like credit card after credit card after credit card, massive car payment, line of credit, and then mortgage. They've got all these debts on one side, but they got all this cash sitting over here. Let's just say they're making 3 to 5%, in their safe assets, but then they're giving away on these debts. And just bear in mind, folks, when you're hearing this, I want you to understand they got enough cash sitting on the side to pay off a good chunk of all these debts. Okay, but yet they don't, because they need that safe money. That's my emergency money. That's my bus fund money. Oh my God, I can't use that. But over on the debts, these credit cards are racking up 25, 29%. And they're just gladly paying the payment every month. The car payments are 6, 7%, which is more than what they're earning on their safe assets. Why haven't people connected the dots that all they need to do is take money from their safe assets, from their pool of cash, pay off their debts? I mean, there's an order to how to do this and a method behind this and a process. Pay off their debts, then take the amount. And this is where people don't do it right. Take the amount you were given Visa when they were charging you 25% and redirect it, change the name on the check from Visa to your name, and then have it bill paid or transferred back into that little segregated account that we talked about earlier, and have that money build up. Because over time, what you're literally doing by taking back the money you were given Visa is you're literally making the same return you were paying Visa. If it was 25% and you're recapturing the exact same amount, you're effectively making 25% of your money, but you don't, because you're making, oh, I'm getting 4 or 5% on this high yield savings account. Yeah. Why hasn't that clicked? Why don't they teach that in grade school, high school, college, at every level?
Yeah, we're making a big mistake by not teaching people this. And I think a big part of it is I would call it sort of financial denial. Like, the bottom line is the same people you're talking about, first of all, kudos that they have some savings, already doing better than a lot of people. Right. But I bet you they don't even know what interest rates their credit cards are at. Like, I bet you they're not even conscious of this. And so it's a real easy thing to just, people get stressed about money. So the bottom line is money is the biggest source of stress in the lives of Americans. They do a study every year, like, what's your biggest source of stress? Like, sometimes politics, but usually it's money for like 3 out of 4 Americans. 3 out of 4 Americans, money's the biggest source of stress in their lives. We're the richest country in all of human history. What are we doing? So we're very stressed about money. And a big part of it is because we're tribal, as I said, and we're focused on what other people have, right? Like, social media is the worst for this. Like, when I was growing up, we didn't have access to social media. And so the only thing I knew people had were the people around me. By the way, congrats, you had a BMX. I had a Huffy. I always wish I had a BMX. So I was like jonesing for the BMX, but now you can get on Instagram. Now you can get on Instagram and you can be like, a Lamborghini, a Porsche 911. I mean, you see it. Oh, those people look so happy. And so we have a consumer's mindset. And so one of the chapters of my book is, you don't want to be a millionaire. You just want to spend $1 million. And it's like, oh, okay. So now we have to really define, what does a millionaire even mean? Because we do a little millionaire test at the beginning. We said, if I gave you $1 million, what would you do with it? And it's by the way, there's a right answer and a wrong answer. And most people say, oh, I'd buy this, I'd buy that. And by the way, some of it's great. I'd take 200,000, I'd invest in a business, blah, blah, blah. And bottom line is, no, that's a poor mindset, because what's just happened is you just lost your $1 million. And then we say the rich mindset does one thing and one thing only with it. It's an asset. They take it, they invest it somewhere, and then they can live off like 40,000 a year if they want. And by the way, that's 40,000 a year forever, the rest of your life. Take that money, save up a couple years of that, down payment for a house, invest in a business. Most businesses fail. So you can start a new business every year for $40,000 investment. So we really sort of distinguish between those two. But I totally agree with you. People aren't paying attention to where their money's going. They're not paying attention to how much debt, it's costing them to service their debt. And it needs to be a big wake-up call for people.
Well, I'm glad you agree on that. Now, folks, listen, like, this whole conversation, the things I didn't tell you in the beginning is, he's a financial planner. He's got a firm, got a couple companies, but I'm not the only one interested in this stuff. Check these stats out. First off, he's partnered with Capital One, JP Morgan Chase, H&R Block to help raise public awareness around these issues. But not only that, this is a long list. I don't even have a list nearly this long. He was featured on ABC News, their 2020 show, Good Morning America, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, NPR, the Los Angeles Times, and Kiplinger's Money Magazine, and I missed some there. So listen, this is important stuff, folks. You need to be listening to this. And the best way to get access is the books. Okay, 8 books, but definitely, most importantly, Start Thinking Rich. So, Dr. Klontz, how do people get your book, get access to you, and then talk a little bit about your mental wealth advisors? And the one thing I love, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here because I'm excited about this, is the way you train your advisors. You're training them on behavioral finance. I spent 16 years as a financial advisor. Never once did they train me on the behavioral side of finance or the psychology around money. It was just sell, 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 sell. Hey, this week is this product. Hey, this mutual fund guy's coming in to talk. Sell their products and all these things. It was never around the psychology and the behavioral aspects. And you're doing that.
Yeah, so I'm kind of lucky and fortunate that I got interested in this topic, and other people got interested also. And usually it's financial advisors, because financial advisors, and you know this, you work directly with clients, and many of them are like, I'm less of a financial advisor, I'm more of a therapist. It's like I tell people what to do, they don't do it. Why are they not taking action in a way that's going to be helpful for them? They have all this resistance to it. And so a big part of what I've done over the last 20 years is train advisors on how to be more effective in helping their clients achieve their financial goals. And I did a couple textbooks that are now being used in over 100 universities training financial advisors. And so, as I mentioned, I'm a professor myself. And this is the cool part too. Now the CFP board, which I'm sure you've heard of, Certified Financial Planners, 9% of the exam is psychology of financial planning, which is essentially what I've been doing for 20 years. So they're using a lot of my textbooks for that. So it's really exciting for me, because I feel like, given that money is the biggest source of stress in the lives of people, who can help them? Probably a financial advisor who's trained in understanding some of this, because we are our own worst enemies when it comes to our behaviors around money. And we can change so much with just a mindset tweak.
I love that. Is this book out now, and how do people get it?
Yeah, it is. So it's at all bookstores. It just became a national bestseller. We're super excited about that. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you buy books, just came out about a month ago.
We're going to put the link up in the description, folks, for that. And also we'll put the link up so you can check out the doctor's website for his company. As you all know, I no longer manage money. I do not work as a financial advisor and never will again. So if you're looking for an advisor, you're looking for someone that fully understands this and can help you with the mental and the tangible aspects of wealth management and financial planning, this is your guy. And have any of you ever heard me say that? Matter of fact, normally I would resist ever bringing a financial advisor on the show, but this episode was so special to me after I read the review that, like, literally I'm telling all of you, get a hold of him, work with him, get through your mental problems around money and make it right, and start investing, folks, and do it the right way, because you're not going to get too many shots at getting it wrong if you just keep doing it your way, listening to the broke ass brother-in-law tell you what you should do with crypto, and then all of a sudden you lose it all, and then you just go right about it and getting advice from the Uber driver. Like, just get straight on that. So with that being said, I want to be very considerate of your time. What would you tell my audience in parting words that you would think is maybe the best advice they can take?
I would say that two things. So first of all, if they can do it, I can do it. If they can do it, I can do it. This is the mindset I want everyone to have. And by that, I mean, whatever it is you want. You want to be an author? It's like, well, find somebody who's an author that you can connect with. Like, because some people might say, yeah, I get what you're saying, Dr. Brad, but you're a male, you're Caucasian, you're this or that or the other. I understand that. And sometimes you might say, yeah, so that might not work for me. I get it. So find somebody that it has, because there's people just like you, look like you, same gender, come from the same neighborhood as you, who've been able to transform their life around money. And by the way, if they can do it, so can you. It's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. It's actually pretty simple once you get the right mindset. So that's number one. Number two, I would say if you're not investing, you have to invest. You have to become an investor right now. Do $1. You say you can't afford it. Do $1. Do $1 a month. Because if you do what it takes to invest $1 a month, you're going to have to go open an account somewhere. You're going to have to do a risk tolerance questionnaire. You're going to have to set up money from your checking account over to that. That is like 99% of the actions you need to take. And then you can just increase it. You can increase it as your income increases, as you get a side hustle, whatever it is. Just become an investor, even if it's $1 a month. Start today.
Fantastic advice, folks. Get the vision correct, and whatever you see, whoever you look at as your idol, is what you want. You can do the same darn thing. I'm proof. Dr. Brad's proof, and everyone else that you have come across that is successful is proof of that, because we all probably started from exactly the same place, maybe even worse off than you did. So start now. Thank you, Dr. Brad. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. And for every one of you watching this, thank you. And also, I'd be remiss not to say this. We're coming up to the end of the year, which is also a beautiful time. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to all of you, and please have a Happy New Year. We will get this out so that every one of you get to listen to this right before Christmas and the holiday season. With that being said, thank you all for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode of the Money School Podcast.